All right, what is up, guys? Welcome back to the channel. If you can see, which you should be able to, you notice I have a guest with me, Alex from the Brothers Binge podcast. What's up?
What's up, everybody? How's it going, Ace?
I'm great. How are you?
Good.
So, guys, if you saw, I'm not sure when I'm actually posting this video, but there was a video in the past with Pedro, and it was a movie talks video, and we discussed 10 of his favorite movies. And we're going to do the exact same thing with Alex. I messaged these guys together and said I want to get you guys on separately because I've had you guys together in the past, and I want you guys to discuss your 10 movies. Now, Alex, you were just telling me something about Pedro's video compared to this video. What was that?
So, Pedro was on first, so I got to give him that. He got first dibs. But Pedro knows what all my favorite movies are, right? So he went out of his way and chose all my favorite movies. So I'm going to have to change my list up a little bit. These are still like my favorite, up there movies. But I got to give, if you guys saw Pedro's video, I'm going to just say real quick, there's some honorable mentions. Infinity War / Endgame, Joker, Back to the Future, and Parasite. I gotta say those. Ace, have you watched Parasite yet?
No, it was literally yesterday, and I've been over this, and it sucks. I'm getting to it. I'm gonna find a way, but it's the movie that won't let me watch it.
What I'm scared about right now is that everyone has told you that it's so good that you're gonna watch it and be like, "Damn, this movie sucks." That's what I'm scared about.
That does happen sometimes, where people just hype the movie up, and then I walk in and I'm like, okay.
Just go in there with low expectations. Don't worry about it. Hopefully it's better.
Yeah, I might. But yeah, all right, let's kick off your list of your 10 of. We'll say 10 of. We won't say 10 best because it has to have to be altered.
They're still up there. They're still up there. But these are going to be in, not any sort or certain order. They're all up there. I'm going to say that. Let's start with The Hangover. I wanted to throw a comedy on there just because, a lot of people when you ask them what their favorite movie is, you start with like, oh, these like dramatic movies or like big action movies. I got to say The Hangover was all around a hilarious movie. I can still watch the first one specifically. I can watch it over and over and still laugh at, all the funny moments. I will say that after the first one, it definitely tanked a little bit. But if we're just talking about the first one, that's definitely going to be on my list.
Yeah, that movie. The sequels we just won't discuss because we know the sequels are just
especially
there.
The third.
But yeah, the first one was kind of, and I've had this discussion as well because generally, like whenever you talk about a movie or watch a movie, I go like when I think about it, I haven't seen it in a while. I go, do other people like that movie? Or was that just me going crazy? And I'm telling you, when I looked up this movie, I think this is the only comedy in the history of the world that has good ratings on everything. I think it has like a good Rotten Tomatoes score. It has a great IMDb. So I think it's like the one comedy in the world that everyone's like, yeah, it's that good. And yeah, it really is. I think the dynamic of those three and then just everything that happens is ridiculous.
And I think that the reason why people don't talk about it as much or the legacy isn't there is because Hangover 2 and 3. I think that really, how like they don't want to bring back like you're a friend or you're a fan of Friends. You know how they didn't want to do like a reunion of Friends because they're scared that they're going to leave a bad memory for the 10 seasons that people love. I think that's what happened with this. They should have done a one and done comedy movie and left it. But
yeah, even stopping at 2 because I think 2 it was like good, like it was decent, it was fine.
Yeah.
But then everyone's like, oh, okay, yeah, whatever. You kind of ruined it, but that's fine. Then they did 3, and everyone's like, all right, you done it. You've fucked up. You've given us 3.
So this movie isn't on my top, or on my top 10. But I gotta say, I watched the video with Pedro, and Pedro said that one of his favorite movies and one of your favorite movies is Pitch Perfect. So I want to say, speaking of 1, 2, and 3, the third Pitch Perfect was not great, to be honest, to me. So I mean, how do you feel about that? Do you agree that it was kind of the same thing as The Hangover, where like 1 and 2 were in its own realm, and then the third one was just like too much?
Yeah, we had the conversation with Pedro because he said the same thing. He's like, I don't really like the sequels. I was like, that's fair because I think 1 legitimately is good. I think 2 is kind of closer to a guilty pleasure where I really like it, but I can understand people like, oh, it's okay. But the third one, I'm just like, it's so just fine, and that's what and for me, and I love that franchise. And anything Britney Stone's in, it makes it hard to dislike. So for me to be like, it's just fine, I can understand people not liking it.
I think it was just a little over the top too. Fat
It just
Amy
didn't.
or Patricia or whatever being like a kind of like a spy or whatever. I didn't like
It
that.
didn't feel like a Pitch Perfect movie. It just felt like the characters from Pitch Perfect did
Yeah,
another movie that wasn't Pitch Perfect. Like
yeah, that's a good way to
all
put it.
the action stuff, and then like even they use instruments in the final act of 3. Like spoiler, but you can't do
Oh
that.
yeah, yeah.
It defeats the whole purpose.
I mean, that part didn't bother me too much because it's like, okay, she's moved on from whatever. But I
Yeah.
guess if the whole movie's about acapella, then I don't know.
It just kind
But
of seems silly. But yeah, I get you. I get you.
yeah, let's go ahead and move on. I will say what is next movie. Actually, let's keep with a random genre. Hereditary. I will say is probably one of my favorite scary movies, even though it's not like scary. I will say that it's got to be up there for that genre of movie just because this movie left us like such a long lasting impression on me. A lot of movies nowadays like Annabelle, The Conjuring, Insidious and stuff, they're good movies, but you don't really remember a lot of stuff that happened from it, 1 week, month, year, or whatever. With Hereditary, that movie has stuck with me. It was a great story. It was just creepy enough to like leave that imagery with you as you like left the theater. I don't know if you've seen it, but I got to say that's on my top 10.
Yeah, no, I've seen it. It's just fucked up. Like that's the easiest way to put it. Like I was just like, what? Like I was just kind of like, it's actually I like that because I'm the biggest advocate of tell a good story. If you're making a horror movie, just tell me a good story, and then I'm good. Like don't just try to throw in jump scares. You don't even necessarily have to put in a jump scare if you can tell me a good story. So this movie didn't. It just gave you and it good because it told a fucked up story and it was a good story, but then the imagery of this movie, like it wasn't really necessarily jump scary. It was just kind of just like the imprint in your mind. You're like, this shit's fucked up.
Just like that scene where I believe it's the mom. She's Toni Collette. She's walking through the house, and there's like people like standing like in the doorways, like far back, like and do you remember that part where she's like walking down the hallway, and all these people are like standing there smiling, like just like little things like that scared me.
It's just like not even like necessarily horror stuff like that really threw me off in the movie. Just like the other characters doing other things and just being weird. I was like, this just the whole movie's made me uncomfortable, and I like it's really smart, that movie.
Right. I mean, one movie that I will say is, and this is not on my top, but just it's in the same realm because I think it's made by the same people. Midsummer was not good. I don't know if you saw that.
No, that's one of the one I missed.
Don't watch it. It's 2.5 hours. It's a roller coaster. It's if you thought Hereditary was disturbing, you haven't seen anything. Midsummer is fucked up. It's weird. Like there's no like jump scares, but it's just like I don't want to watch this. But I don't know. If you're bored during quarantine or isolation, whatever, you can go ahead and watch it.
Pick it up.
Yeah. But watch Parasite first. I will say my next movie was Ready Player One. That one was a surprise because I actually didn't read the book before I watched it. Pedro read the book, and he was telling me, he was like, yo, you got to read this book. It's so good. And then they just so happened to make the movie. And after I watched the movie, then I read the book. And I just got to say, that's got to be one of the best like sci-fi movies I've ever seen. Who hasn't dreamt of living in a world like that where you can just do whatever you want? I mean, although obviously they're living in the slums, it was like the imagery was just great.
Yeah, that was one of the movies where I watched it with my friends. It's like this movie is like made for like us, and like you probably have like the same kind of group as well, where it's just like it's got like tons of pop culture reference. It's a phenomenal story. It looks spectacular. And the only thing about that movie, it's phenomenal. It scares me a little bit because I don't want to get to that. Just because of how shit their real lives are, I don't want to have to live in in that AI world all the time. Like that'd be awful.
We're slowly inching there, with everything in quarantine, and we already have VR and stuff. Eventually, we're just gonna be staying in our house, just living our lives in our house. We are already. But next, I'll save that one for later. I'll say Saving Private Ryan. Tom Hanks. It was one of his earlier roles. He's probably one of my favorite actors, Tom Hanks. That movie I didn't watch until later in life. I think that it was released in early 2000s, if not late 90s, and I didn't watch it until 2014. So I'm glad that I was able to watch it when I was a little bit older, and I got to, I really understood what was going on, and I didn't just see explosions and war and everything. It's a sad movie, but it's a great movie.
Yeah, that I think it's kind of the same thing mentioned in, if anyone's seen the Pedro video, is he had Castaway with Tom Hanks, and I kind of said the same thing where Tom Hanks is at a point now, and I mean he's been at a point for a while now where he just feels like he can do no wrong, and everything he does, and at this point, if it's been out for more than 10 years with Tom Hanks, it's just iconic. And I think this is another one like Castaway and like a lot of the other roles that he's done that has just become iconic. It's kind of that, front of the war movie genre. If someone mentions, oh, what's your favorite war movie, 5 out of 10 people might say it's Saving Private Ryan.
Right. I mean, it's up there. I think that it is a little long, but it's a great movie for what it is. And I don't know. Staying on Tom Hanks, actually, I didn't realize I did this subconsciously, but I have another movie with Tom Hanks and Leo DiCaprio. I always say Leo DiCaprio because for some reason I can't say Leonardo, like I messed up just now. But Catch Me If You Can. That is probably one of my favorite Leo movies and Tom Hanks movies as well. I like movies that I don't typically like inspired by true events movies, like when they're like super, when they say inspired by a true events and then they really embellish everything and everything is kind of way bigger than what the original story was. But this was pretty much what these guys went through. Like this kid Leo basically conned the world into believing that he was like a scientist, a lawyer, a pilot in the military, and he just got away with it. And I thought it was such an interesting premise, and I thought that they really worked well off of each other. I don't know, you've seen it, right?
Yeah. It's one of those movies where it's like, you see that inspired by true events. You're like, yeah, but is it? Like, it can't be, right? And then you look into it, and you're like, this guy literally did this, and these movies a lot. I think the biggest word to watch, to say for this movie is just fun to see Leonardo DiCaprio's character just do everything he wants. The way he cons everyone is ridiculous. Like, it's just like, this man is the greatest of all time. Like, with conning, it's just ridiculous, and it's so fun. I think it has its really funny moments as well, and I think that the back and forth between Tom Hanks and Leonardo DiCaprio is really, really fun to watch. Like, they're phenomenal in this movie.
And you previously said that Tom Hanks does no wrong or can do no wrong, but Leo's another one that can't do wrong, really. I mean, he has The Great Gatsby, Wolf of Wall Street, this movie, Inception. There's so there could be a whole nother video just on like his best movies, because I can't really think of I guess Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, it wasn't my favorite, but not because of him. Did you watch Once Upon a Time in Hollywood?
I was gonna say the opposite. I don't really like The Great Gatsby. I don't think that's him. I just think I don't like the style of the movie. I think it's kind of just weird. I think it's Baz Luhrmann. I just didn't really like his style. But then I really liked Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. But that even shows you that even when he does a movie that might not be like universal, like there's still a big group of people.
It's just
the
world
like
around him that
And
go ahead.
We're both too nice. But yeah, like you can list off. He's one of those. Both of these guys are like two of the probably 5 actors that when I tell you, oh, it's a Leonardo DiCaprio movie or it's a Tom Hanks movie, you're basically like, yeah, it'll be good. Like a Christopher Nolan movie. I feel like he's a director that does that. Where you're like, this is a Christopher Nolan movie. Like, oh, it's gonna be good. Like to have that is just such a great thing, and yeah, they crushed it.
I mean, you can't say the same for other actors. Like, you say Nicolas Cage movie, people are like, okay, I'm not gonna watch it. But when it comes to Leo, Tom Hanks, even Brad Pitt, you're gonna be like, all right, it might not be bad, and you're gonna give it a shot.
There's even some great actors that you can't even they're good, but you're still like, oh, I don't know if the movie's necessarily gonna be good. Like it doesn't. It's not just like they're that good of an actor that make everything great. Like there's actors that are good that just don't make great films all the time. Like I said this, I think, because I can't remember what the film was, but I think it was a Will Smith movie in Pedro's list, and I was like, Will Smith is generally good in everything, but that doesn't always equivalent to a great movie. So for Leo to be able to be like, he's that good in everything that he almost can't make a bad film is crazy.
Right. And that kind of leads me into my next movie. I won't say that the remake is my favorite, but the original movie. But Aladdin. Aladdin is probably I want to incorporate, some sort of family movie. So Aladdin has to be on my top 10. I think that it's a testament to the movie and to the story that the cartoon was good, and even the live action remake was good. You can't say that for a lot of the other Disney remakes. I think this movie is probably the most watched Disney movie I've ever seen, besides like The Lion King or maybe Toy Story. But yeah, I couldn't make a list and not put Aladdin on there.
Yeah, that. Funnily enough, this would probably make my list well if I was to do my top 10. I think this is probably my favorite animated movie of all time. I love that, the original, and it just hits everything it needs to hit. It's just like I think it has one of the best soundtracks, if not the best soundtrack of all time. I think it's like those songs are iconic. Obviously, Robin Williams is phenomenal as the genie, and like the whole movie is just awesome. When it comes to the remake, I really liked it, and I didn't expect. I was like really not expecting to, because I'm like, it just, and I know what's his name, Will Smith. We just talked about him, came out with the look, and everyone's like, oh, it's gonna be trash. And some people stuck to that. They were like, it wasn't as good, but I really enjoyed it. I think to me, when it comes to those live action remakes, I think you've got to have cartoon to human. I think when it came to The Lion King, you just did a cartoon to a CGI lion, and it's like there's no real emotion. Whereas I feel like there's a new character and there's new stories to build off and new performances that can kind of get away with, retelling the story.
Yeah, and I don't think that audiences care if the remakes take creative liberties, as long as they still have those moments of nostalgia. So they hit like all the big songs. Like you said, they were able to introduce like new characters like Nassim Pedrad, I believe, which is Will Smith's love interest. And what I liked about Will's interpretation of Genie was that he kind of took bits and pieces of Robin Williams' portrayal, but he still made it his own. I was scared that he was going to go up there and try to be Robin Williams, and I'm glad that he didn't. And I mean, I think that other movies like Mulan, it's not out yet, because of everything, it got delayed. But I think people are excited for it, but at the same time, I think it's really going to suffer because it's not going to have like the main things that made it Mulan, like the songs, some of the characters. How do you feel about that remake? I mean, were you excited for that originally?
Not really, just because in general I'm not a big Mulan guy. Like that's not one of my top movies, so it's not really against the remaking it. But when it comes to just the remakes, for any remake, the thing is for me, there's a new audience that are going to see this movie. There's people that maybe just, they're born in 2013. They're born in 2014. They might be 6 or 7 years old that haven't seen the original Aladdin. They haven't seen 1995 Lion King or whatever the year it came out with. Seeing a movie in the big screen and seeing it live action can be such a bigger thing for them. So just recreating that kind of love for a movie is fine. And I like that they take creative liberties as long as you're not ruining what the core of the movie is. So I'm fine with that. And like you said, I think Will Smith really was smart about it, because he said, I'm not going to go and do a Robin Williams impression. I'm going to do what would a genie look like, because that's what it's about. It's a genie. It's not necessarily what Robin Williams is. It's a genie. And his impression of a genie was that. It was great. And then the Mulan thing as well. If you can get a live action version and make it as good as, or not as good, but just keep the core of what the movie needs to be, I think you can make a great film. And I think for the most part, I've liked almost all of the live action ones I've seen. Even like The Lion King, I thought I enjoyed it.
I didn't mind The Lion King.
It just wasn't much different from the animated one, which is probably my biggest problem with it.
I think a lot of people's gripes with that movie was the fact that like their face didn't really animate. It didn't really move much, which, I mean, I know that they were trying to make it live action, and then they changed it to like, oh, it's a CGI like movie, and that's how it got nominated for all those movies, like Best Animated Picture and stuff. But they could have like cartoonized the face a little bit. They could have left everything else the same. But yeah, I mean, moving on, I want to get to some of the other ones. I gotta say, I mean, like I mentioned earlier, Infinity War, Endgame, they're both up there, but we're gonna leave that to the side. So I would have to say my next favorite Marvel movie, even probably tied with them, would be Captain America: Civil War. That movie was one of my favorite just because it was it was the first movie where you really saw tension between them. And I think that also, being a fan of like the comic books, I know that that storyline was one of my favorites, to read. So to see it translate to live action, I thought it was incredible.
Yeah, I think this movie specifically as well, it's one of the ones where you're like, if I want to show, and obviously you don't want to start with this movie, but if I want to show people what the MCU is about, which is having fun, making jokes, showing off as many great characters as it can, but then also having your serious moments, I think this is a great film that does that, because it does have its really fun moments, because in the end, they don't want to really kill each other. They're like,
Right.
we're fighting, but we're not, we just want to get our way. We're not fighting to kill each other, so it doesn't have to be really serious. They're joking through some of the battles. You see a bunch of the characters interact, like we got to see in Infinity War and Endgame, characters that we haven't necessarily seen all the time interact. We got to see some more characters interact. Introduction of Spider-Man, which was huge. And,
That was awesome.
that on to what he did with his two solo movies and what he did in Endgame and Infinity War. So I think, this movie is for sure one of the best MCU films.
I mean, you pretty much hit the nail on the head. It has it's dark moments. The tension between Tony and Steve. There's a lot built up to that point. When they're trying to sign the Accords, and then you jump from that tenseness or tension, and then go all the way to the airport fight. And there's so many great moments, like you said, like Spider-Man's there for the first time. Natasha and Clint are fighting, but they are obviously best friends, so they're not really trying to hurt each other, and they're like, we're going to still hang out this weekend or whatever they say. And that was the most comic book movie. I don't know if I want to say that. That's one of the most comic book accurate movies to me in the MCU, I would say. Even though obviously some people are on different sides or whatever in the comic book, but you know what I mean. It reminded me the most of of a cartoon or a comic book. I'm trying to figure out which ones I didn't say already. Said that one. All right, so I think we're moving up to the final three. I'm gonna say The Dark Knight is. I mean, it has to be on my list. I'm sure it's on a lot of people's lists. Heath Ledger, there's nothing that you can say about him. Joaquin Phoenix did great as Joker, but Heath Ledger did incredible as well. I don't know if you can really compare them because they're two different Jokers entirely. But his portrayal, and you can say what you will about Christian Bale. I mean, I know Pedro's going to talk shit too. Pedro hates Christian Bale as Batman because he has a lisp, and he I don't know, he has dumb reasons for why he doesn't like him. But I love the interaction between Bruce or Batman and Joker throughout this whole movie. It was just you couldn't take your eyes off of it. It was just such a great movie from beginning to end.
Yeah, this is one of the movies where it's it precedes being a comic book movie. It's just more than a comic book movie. It's just a movie, and it's one of the best movies of all time, I think, for the most part. You could ask maybe 100 people, and I reckon 70 of them might have this movie in their top 10 list. This movie is phenomenal, and I think the biggest thing of this movie, and people always talk about it, and Joker and Heath Ledger's performance is phenomenal, and it's one of those ones where Joaquin Phoenix was so damn good, and people were still there was still not really any conversation to be but was he better than Heath Ledger? People were still look how good you can be. We're not going to have that conversation. That's how good this man was. And I think the whole story is told phenomenally. It's very smart with everything it does. Again, Christopher Nolan mentioned him before. The man, really can't do any wrong, and they crush it. Everyone, even down to the supporting cast, is really damn good. Obviously, you've got ridiculous actors in your supporting cast. Gary Oldman. I'm forgetting his name. Alfred. The disrespect to this man right now.
You just made me forget it. You made me forget it.
No.
But we have Morgan Freeman as Lucius.
Morgan Freeman. Michael Caine. Michael Caine is his name. Disrespect. We apologize.
She replaced Katie Holmes for some reason, but
yeah.
Did we ever figure that out? Did we ever figure out how they just switched her out and no one said anything about it?
I think it was because Katie Holmes don't really give a shit anymore. It wasn't. What was she in? What was that show? What was it?
Dawson's Creek.
Dawson's Creek. They're the time has passed. We don't. Katie Holmes isn't a thing
we don't
anymore.
need you anymore. It's okay.
Yeah.
And she was still married to Tom Cruise at that point, so who knows what was happening?
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, the supporting cast was just phenomenal, and everything in this movie, it's so hard to really get any negatives. I feel it just tells such a good story where it doesn't feel because I know some comic book movies you can get the best comic book movie. I can give you an Endgame, or I can give you something even something less toned down like a Guardian, something like that isn't 300 characters. but there's going to be an element of people that are like, I'm not really into comic book movies. I feel like Dark Knight is one of the ones that you can go watch this and they won't even really think about it being Batman. But I suppose that helps that it isn't superpowers and it's just so grounded with just, it's a guy versus a guy initially. It's Joker versus Bruce Wayne, and that battle and just seeing it go down, it's ridiculous. It's phenomenal.
And yeah, I mean, that's what it boils down to is at the end of the day, that movie or Batman in general, he's a detective. He's a detective that just happens to be wearing a bat suit, which makes him a comic book character. But I mean, other than that, you strip away all that stuff, and it's still a great character facing off against a great character. And yeah, I had to put that on my list. Oh, and I wanted to say about the Joaquin Phoenix thing. He did great. That was probably one of my favorite movies of last year. I think the best thing to happen to him and to that movie was to have Jared Leto's awful portrayal somewhere in the middle between Heath Ledger and him, just so that way people are like, well, he's just as good as Heath Ledger, but he was definitely way better than Jared Leto. So I think that really helped for him.
Yeah.
But sure. This one I'm gonna say just because I know it's gonna make people mad, and I know it's gonna make Pedro mad. You've listened to the podcast, you know how I feel about this movie. X-Men 3: The Last Stand. It's one of the best movies I have ever seen. I know people hate it, and I know, and it's fine. I know people will talk shit because they're like, oh, so many people die, it's not accurate, and blah 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 blah, whatever. I kind of judge movies, especially movies like that. I judge movies on how good they are based on their rewatchability, I guess. I've watched that movie 1,000 times, and I'm still interested every time. I'm still like intrigued by the fight scenes. I'm still intrigued by the storylines and everything. I to this day I don't know why people get so mad about it, but I mean, take it away. How do you feel? I don't think you're a fan, but
I'm not gonna bring the video into a negative space because it is a top 10 list, and I'm keeping it positive. I actually don't think it's a bad movie. I think it's just good. I think it's fine. It's not a bad movie. It's not as crap as I think a lot of people say.
What's your top 3 X-Men movies?
I think it's got to be First Class, Days of Future Past, and Logan. That was really easy. I didn't think about that much, but
I would switch out First Class with Last Stand, but yeah, the other two are good.
Yeah, see, I've always had a real love for First Class for whatever reason. I think maybe it was one of the first X-Men movies that I really, really got into, and this is really good. But yeah, I think. I don't think, honestly, I think other than Origins, which is just a poorly made film, and then Wolverine, which I think is just slow and boring to me. Other than those two, I honestly don't think there's a bad, X-Men movie to me. I think the rest are they're either good, fine to really great. So that
Apocalypse wasn't great. You can't say that.
I didn't mind that. I thought it was just good, fine. It's got
to me, it was on the same level as. It was called Apocalypse, and it was set in the 80s. We know that they're gonna live.
That's the biggest.
It bothers
thing.
Me so much. They were like, "Oh, it's the end of time." Blah blah blah. They could have just, I don't know. Anyways.
And even then, I like Dark Phoenix, and all people didn't like Dark Phoenix. I actually enjoyed it. So it's kind of again it's so there's almost levels to these movies where I'm there's a couple of bad ones, but most of them kind of sit in that level where I'm they're good enough. That's kind of my thing to a lot of them.
Even the movies, ones. Right? Even the movies that I say oh, they're not the best X-Men movies, I would still watch them if I see them on TV or even though Wolverine, not Wolverine, Origins. I mean, that movie's like you said poorly made, but will I still watch it if I find it on TV? Sure. So I mean,
I actually did a rewatch. I did a video on ranking the X-Men movies, and I was I think Origins gets kind of a bad rap. That was my thought process going on. I feel people should shit on how bad it is. And then I watched it. I'm telling you, if you haven't watched it in a while, do not rewatch that movie.
I haven't watched it in a while.
It gets worse, because I was in that thought process of being because I did it for Apocalypse, so it was probably almost a year ago. And I was it can't be, though. It can't be as bad as people are making it seem. It is. So I wouldn't recommend rewatching it. It's not even just it's just not well made, and that's the biggest thing. It's just really bad CG and stuff like that, and shitty puns throughout the movie and bad script. It's once you open your eyes to actually watch the movie in a new light, expecting it to be bad, you like really see everything come to light.
See that the CG was the biggest problem. I remember one scene in particular. I think it's the scene that everybody talks about, but the Wolverine claws where he's like clinking them together when he's in the bathroom, and like the claws are like coming off of his hands. And I'm like, you guys couldn't render that like a little bit more? I'm sure you guys have like Marvel money or whoever owned you at the time.
Yeah.
But the movie, I mean, from what I remember, like the scenes where like that little group, like when Ryan Reynolds and that little team, they were going up the elevator and he cuts that bullet in half. Like there's like cool moments like that, or when Gambit like flipped over the thing. But I mean, it's
before you finish off your list, because myself being not a huge X-Men Last Stand fan, not saying I don't dislike it, but I'm not as big as obviously you are. If you get 10 seconds to change everyone's mind in this movie, give it to me right now. X-Men Last Stand.
The movie was supposed to be made as the end cap of a trilogy. They didn't think that they were going to last 20 or 11 plus years or however long it lasted. No, I think it was like 19. But they didn't think that it was going to last as long as it did. They thought that this was going to be like tied in a nice little bow. So they killed, spoiler alert, they killed Jean, they killed Scott, they killed Professor X. I think that's where a lot of people get upset about this movie, is because they're like, oh, it's not accurate, people are dying, that doesn't make sense, blah, blah, blah. They were just trying to give like a send-off to the cast. And to me, I kind of like movies that aren't always cookie-cutter, happy-ending movies. So I kind of like that there was a little bit of darkness in that, but I guess that's my piece. Other than that, I mean, I don't know how you guys can hate like the action scenes from the movie, because they're incredible, but...
I don't hate the movie, but that was actually a good pitch. I like what you said there. I think that can... I don't know if we can change people's mind on the movie, but maybe give it another go. Maybe rewatch it if you haven't seen it. Yeah, for sure. All right, is this the last movie you got on your list?
I think this is the last one. Let me just make sure. I said that one. Yep. All right, so this is the last one. If you've heard our podcast at The Brothers Binge, I don't know why I said at The Brothers Binge, you know that I've talked about this movie 1,000 times. It's my favorite movie. This one is my number one movie, so I know I wasn't ranking the other ones, but this is number one. Artificial Intelligence, starring Haley Joel Osment and Jude Law, right? Yeah, Jude Law. It's probably one of my favorite movies. I don't know why I grew like such an attachment to it, but it was one of those movies, again, when it all kind of goes back to like rewatchability. This movie for some reason was always on TV. It was on TBS, FX, TNT. I don't know if you guys have the same channels over there, but there was a lot. It was on TV all the time from like the years of 2003 to 2006. So I saw it a lot. And for people who don't know what it is, it's about a family that has a kid that gets sick, and he's basically like in a coma. So they are kind of grieving the loss of, not a loss of a child, but they're feeling empty. So they buy a robot kid that is like manufactured, because this is like way in the future. The kid comes into the family, then their kid becomes healthy, and then they kick the robot kid out. And then it's about his journey on how he can get back to his family and everything. And I don't know if you've ever seen it, but if you haven't, please go watch it.
Yeah, no, I apologies if I said this with Pedro, because I can't remember if I had this off or when we were recording, but he said that was his pick. He said, I guarantee this movie's going to be on Alex's list. And I was like, oh, yeah, I think like it would make sense from what you talked about it. But I've mentioned I literally have never heard of this movie until you spoke about this on the podcast. I like legitimately never heard of it. Like,
I don't know.
And I don't know how, maybe because, again, all those channels you listed we have like a kind of a cable service, and a lot of those on what we call it Foxtel, and a lot of people don't have Foxtel, so some of those channels don't really exist in Australia as much. But yeah, like I legitimately hadn't heard of it, but you obviously, I spoke about it a couple of times on the podcast and on your list being a huge thing. If I can actually double check right now, I'm going to move myself off camera. I'm going to stay here. I've got a big Steven Spielberg box set. I want to see if this movie's included. So
dude, if you have it, you got to watch it today.
So bear with me.
Is it on there?
This is the box set. It is not on here. So this is his director collection. And it's a bunch of his films. Unfortunately, it didn't make the cut. So I can't say I accidentally own it without realizing. But
well, don't let that discredit you or discredit the movie.
it's Spielberg, so I will give it a chance for sure, especially your highly recommendation. Again, you've another movie that I haven't seen. If you can pitch to the world and myself why it is so good and why we should watch it, go ahead.
Okay, so this is going to be harder to pitch just because it's not obviously a well-known property like X-Men or anything. But with this, it's a long movie, so it does have different. I guess that's a benefit to it. It's a long movie, and it does feel like 3 or 4 different movies all in one, right? So like the beginning of the movie, everything's happy, everything's great. Middle of the movie, the kid is lost, and he's going through. And again, if you haven't seen a trailer or you haven't seen anything about this movie, you don't know like what I'm trying to have you picture. But the world is very futuristic. There's a lot of robots, a lot of cyborgs, a lot of everything that you would think the future is, right? And it's a really sad movie at the end of the day. Like maybe there's a connection there. I think I like sad movies and stuff, but it's a really sad movie where I don't want to give away the ending, but I can't sell this movie because it's so long and there's so much to it. Just take my word for it. It's a good movie.
All right, it's Spielberg. It's futuristic. I'll give it a whirl just because it's on your list. And would you consider it to be like the tippity top of your list without saying if it's 1 or 2 or 3 or whatever? Would it be up there?
Yeah, I have to. But again, I haven't seen this movie in a while, so the futuristic stuff that I'm talking about, it might not look great, but you just watch it in the eyes of 2002 or something like that. Don't watch it like with nowadays CGI. But
all right.
I would say that's my number 1.
Yeah. Oh, okay. All right. I'll give it a whirl then. If you want to recap your list for everyone, to give them a quick whirl of the 10 movies you chose.
The 10 movies I chose were The Hangover, Hereditary, Ready Player One, Captain America: Civil War, Saving Private Ryan, Aladdin, Catch Me If You Can, X-Men 3: The Last Stand, The Dark Knight, and Artificial Intelligence. With honorable mentions.
List.
Honorable mentions, the one that Pedro stole from me: Joker, Parasite, Back to the Future, and the other ones.
Yeah, I like it, and what I like about it is, again, I think I mentioned this in the beta video, getting someone to give a list and give their top 10 list or 10 of their favorite movies, it tells them what their like movie style is like, what kind of they're into. That is such a broad scale of movies. I think for like the first 6 movies, 7 movies you just list on that list, I think nothing was close to another movie on that list, which is great because that's honestly what you want. You want a very broad scale, and you've definitely got that, which I like a lot.
Yeah, I mean you can't chain yourself down to just 1 or 2 genres. I mean, there's so many great movies out there. I mean, look at Parasite. It's a foreign film. I saw you talk about this with Pedro, but it's a foreign film. You never hear this much hype about a foreign film. Usually you're just like, oh, okay, well, I mean, I'm sure it's good. It won awards, whatever. But the fact that there was so much buzz around it, I watched it and I was pleasantly surprised. And, it's got to be one of my favorite movies besides this list.
Yeah, for sure. All right. So for those who don't know, Alex and Pedro as well, who was in the last Movie Talks video, they have a podcast together. It is The Brothers Binge. Would you like to plug everything, do everything, say what you got to say?
Yeah. You guys can find The Brothers Binge. Right now we're on a little bit of a break, but you guys can find The Brothers Binge on Instagram and Twitter at Brothers Binge. You guys can find us on Facebook. Possibly coming soon to YouTube. I don't want to, hopefully if everything in the world gets better, possibly YouTube, but, and you guys can find me on my social medias if you want at Alex Lopez 210.
Yeah, for sure. And again, I'm not 100% when this video will be dropping. So there could be a chance when you look now, so make sure you double check that the podcast is back and going by, the time this video comes back up.
And let's say that this is right after the Pedro video. We have a bunch of podcast episodes up there. So if you want to go ahead and binge them, it's called The Brothers Binge for a reason. So
yeah, and your boy was a guest, so that's enough for you guys to go over there, and listen. There is, again, I said the same thing, but if you're not you might look at some of the movies and go, oh well, this was maybe a year ago. This movie's a bit like bad to date. I'm gonna listen to some episodes. The games and the quizzes and stuff they play at the end is very, very funny. It's worth a listen for sure. I want to apologize. I don't know if it's happening, but generally there's some technical difficulties. It's a curse whenever I call with Alex Paper. There's something that goes wrong. So I will say now I apologize for that. Usually like a blurry screen or something goes wrong whenever I film. I think the first time we had an audio problem, the second time we had a video problem. So we'll see what happens. Make sure you follow me on Instagram at ASavies. It probably is a little bit slow right now because there's no new release movies coming out. I think everything in the entertainment world is kind of on a hold, which sucks. But again, thank you so much for watching. Thank you for coming on. Alex, make sure you go and follow all his stuff. And that pretty much wraps it up. Thank you guys for watching.
Peace.